You refresh the listing again. The photos are the same. The hallway carpet still looks thin. The kitchen light still flickers in the corner image. But the number beside it is heavier now. It sits there like a weight on your chest. You blink, scroll down, scroll back up, and feel your shoulders tighten without thinking. This place was barely possible yesterday. Now it leans away from you. You tell yourself it's just timing. Someone else must have clicked first. Maybe demand picked up overnight. You stare at your phone in the quiet of the room. Thumb hovering, breath shallow. The budget you set in your head starts to bend, just a little, because it has to. You don't move, but the option feels farther. What you believed was simple. Prices change when something real happens. A renovation, a new tenant, a reason you could point to. But nothing changed in that apartment. Only the number did. And the longer you look, the more often it happens. Across different streets, different buildings, different days. Your choices don't disappear loudly. They narrow silently, refresh by refresh. And each refresh pulls you closer to paying more than you planned. And every pause tightens the squeeze, shrinking options before you notice the loss. You think this is about one website, one listing, one unlucky moment. You tell yourself it's just that platform behaving strangely today. But the feeling follows you when you close the app. It shows up again when you open another listing site, then another. Different colors, different layouts. The same pressure in your chest when you see the numbers lining up higher than you remember. You believed each price stood alone, set by a landlord reacting to real people. The contradiction appears quietly. The numbers across platforms begin to resemble each other too closely. They move in the same direction, at the same pace, as if they're watching the same signal. The personal implication lands slowly. You aren't reacting to one owner's decision anymore. You're stepping into a field where expectations are already tilted upward. Think about how flights behave. You check a route in the morning, leave it open, come back at night, and the starting at price has drifted away. Hotels do it too. You watch rooms disappear, prices jump, then stabilize at a higher floor. You thought waiting helped. The contradiction is familiar now. Waiting often costs more, even when nothing about you changed. The belief that patience protects you starts to crack. Across markets, across screens, the pattern repeats. You don't negotiate against a person first. You confront a number that arrived before you did. And once it's there, it frames everything that follows. And once that frame sets, every conversation begins from a higher loss point. You sit at the kitchen table with your laptop open, the screen glowing against the dark counter. Tabs line the top like doors you're afraid to open. Each one is an apartment you already pictured yourself inside. You believed comparing more options would protect you, that seeing everything would give you leverage. The contradiction shows itself in the numbers creeping upward together, as if your search itself is being watched. The personal implication settles in your stomach. The act of looking is changing what you're allowed to see. Your fingers hover over the trackpad. Refresh. A listing you bookmarked yesterday is back, but the monthly cost is higher, and the available date is closer. You didn't hesitate. You didn't negotiate. You just existed on the page. The room around you stays quiet, but your breathing shortens. You start adjusting your expectations instead of the listings. Smaller rooms, longer commutes, fewer windows. This is where time slips away. Nights turn into scanning sessions, mornings into mental math. You believed effort meant progress. The contradiction appears when hours of searching don't widen choice. They compress it. The personal implication is subtle and heavy. Time spent doesn't buy clarity. It buys acceptance. You stop asking whether the price makes sense and start asking whether you can survive it. Your identity shifts without announcement. You're no longer someone choosing a home. You're someone reacting to moving numbers. The hallway photos blur together. The same gray floors, the same staged plants, the same rising figures. You feel yourself shrinking inside the process, adapting to the screen instead of shaping it. And by the time you notice, your standards fall faster than the prices ever will. You imagine negotiation as a conversation. Two people, a unit, a number in the middle. You believed showing up prepared gave you ground to stand on. The contradiction reveals itself before you ever speak. The number you're meant to discuss has already hardened somewhere else. When you finally reach out, the reply feels rehearsed, detached, almost mechanical. The personal implication lands quietly. The starting point wasn't set for you. Picture the leasing office hallway. Fluorescent lights, a laminated sign taped to the door. You sit in a plastic chair scrolling through your phone while waiting. The price you saw online is printed on a sheet behind the desk. It looks official now. Heavier, less flexible. You sense it's not just a suggestion. It's a reference everyone else has already agreed on. You believed walking away preserved power. The contradiction stings when walking away doesn't reset anything. You open another app in the parking lot and see the same range repeating. Different buildings, similar numbers. The personal implication tightens. Leaving doesn't free you, it cycles you back into the same frame. This pressure doesn't just touch money. It seeps into relationships. Conversations with partners turn shorter, more careful. Friends stop sending listings because you already know how they'll end. Autonomy erodes when every path leads to the same narrowing corridor. You aren't choosing between options anymore. You're choosing how much loss you can tolerate. And once that tolerance sets, the ceiling keeps rising without resistance. There's a moment when the search stops feeling active. You're still scrolling, still saving, still checking alerts, but something inside you has already adjusted. You believed your budget was a boundary, a line that protected you. The contradiction reveals itself when that line moves without a conversation. The personal implication is unsettling. The boundary you trusted was never solid. It was flexible and not by your choice. You notice it late at night, lying in bed with the phone held above your face. The glow washes the ceiling. A number that once felt impossible now feels normal. You didn't get a raise. Your hours didn't change. But your sense of what's acceptable did. That shift didn't come from desire. It came from repetition. From seeing the same higher figures again and again until resistance dulled. This is where autonomy quietly drains. You think you're deciding, but you're mostly adapting. You start planning your life around the higher number. Which dinners get skipped? Which trips get delayed? Which savings goals slow down? The apartment search bleeds into everything else, reshaping timelines you thought were independent. Time loss stacks on top of money loss, and neither feels dramatic enough to fight. Your relationships feel the pressure too. Conversations circle the same question. Can we make this work? Not, is this fair? You believed fairness lived somewhere in the market. The contradiction becomes personal when fairness stops being relevant. What matters now is endurance. How long you can carry the weight without dropping something else. You aren't pushed all at once. You're eased upward, inch by inch, until the new height feels unavoidable. And once you're standing there, stepping back down no longer feels possible. Think about when you first started looking. The optimism. The sense that with enough patience, something would line up. You believed access was earned by effort. The contradiction emerges when effort only accelerates exposure. The more you engage, the more the numbers harden ahead of you. The personal implication lands clearly now. Participation itself carries a cost. You refresh alerts during work breaks, in parking lots, while waiting for elevators. Each glance reinforces the same range. The body responds before the mind does. Jaw tightens, shoulders rise. A shallow breath you don't notice until it's already gone. This isn't panic. It's conditioning. Your nervous system learning what to expect. Identity loss creeps in quietly. You stop thinking of yourself as someone with options. You start thinking in terms of limits imposed elsewhere. You measure apartments against what you've already surrendered. Space, distance, comfort. You tell yourself it's temporary. The contradiction is that temporary adjustments rarely reverse. They settle in and become the baseline. You believed markets responded to people. The lived reality feels inverted. People respond to numbers that arrived first. By the time you enter the picture, the shape of the outcome is already formed. You don't feel tricked. You feel late. And that feeling carries its own cost. Because once lateness becomes normal, urgency replaces choice everywhere else. At some point, the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. You see it when friends talk about moving and mention the same numbers you're seeing. You believed everyone was facing different conditions, different luck. The contradiction appears when the ranges match too closely, across neighborhoods and timelines. The personal implication is stark. This isn't about your choices alone anymore. Platforms that feel neutral begin to act like measuring sticks. Zillow, Redfin, screens that present themselves as mirrors of reality start shaping what landlords expect before you ever speak. Pricing tools feed those expectations, and large operators follow them because they're already there. You arrive last, reacting to a reference that's been reinforced thousands of times. This isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It just sets the floor higher each time someone looks. Identity loss follows when you realize your role has shifted from negotiator to adapter. Autonomy thins when every path begins from the same elevated point. Relationships, plans, timelines all bend around that reference. You thought the market was something you entered. The contradiction is that it enters you first, through the screen. And once it does, stepping outside the frame feels increasingly unrealistic. Rent feels like a fair exchange because it looks like one. You believed the number reflected reality. The contradiction sits quietly in front of you now. The reference arrives before you do. The personal implication is simple and heavy. You pay more or you lose access faster without a single conversation. This has a name: algorithmic price anchoring. And once you see the anchor, every higher number suddenly feels less accidental. Bottom of form.